So it just kind of feels like, I don't know the exact statistics, but really everywhere you go, it seems like there's young families. So you're thinking about moving to Portland and you're bringing a family with you, or you're thinking about raising a family here. Well, in this video, we're going to talk about what it's like to raise a family in Portland, Oregon, and all that starts now. Hey, what's up everybody? This is Seth and Paul coming to you from Portland, Oregon. Today we're at Washington Park at the Oregon Zoo. And if you want to learn everything there is to know about what it's like to live, work, eat, sleep, play, the pros and cons of living in Portland, Oregon, make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit the little bell icon to make sure you get notified every time we drop a new video. People reach out to us all the time who are thinking about moving here, and we love to talk to you. So if that's you, give us a call, send us a text, shoot us an email, schedule a Zoom call in the description of this video. However you decide to get a hold of us, we'd love to help you with your next move. All right, so today we're talking about raising a family in Portland, Oregon. What is that like? What are the things to do? What are some of the pros and cons? I think overall it's a great place to raise a family, but you know, we're probably both a little biased because we live here and we're raising families here. So, you know,
and we've lived here our entire lives.
Exactly. So, you know, we grew up here as children, and we're now raising families here. I myself have a 2-year-old daughter and one on the way.
I got a 3-year-old and 1-year-old.
Yeah, so we're right in the thick of it. A lot of late nights, a lot of sleepless nights, and kind of everything in between that comes along with that. So if you're thinking about moving to the Portland area with a family, or again, thinking about potentially raising a family here, having kids, we want to talk about, you know, what are the options for childcare, schools, activities, you know, are there things to do? Can you still have a social life? Where to go? All of that stuff. And stick around to the end because we're going to talk about, is Portland safe for kids, which I know that is probably the top of the list for all parents, you know, who are thinking about moving here.
Let's start with schools.
Yeah, schools.
All right. Well, so schools, as realtors, we really can't talk too specifically about schools. So when you go online and you search for schools and you search some of the top schools in Oregon, you're going to find a couple of different lists. They're all going to be pretty similar, but kind of all in all, we have a lot of really great schools here. As far as nationally, we sort of fall kind of right in the middle of the pack. At least for public schools. We've got a lot of great private schools as well, but for the public schools, we do have a lot of great public schools. We do have a lot of new public schools as well too. And as far as navigating those things, other than kind of just seeing what the top rated schools are, that's part of what we'll be here to kind of guide you and kind of help you with. Depending on what's most important to you, we can kind of show you where some of the schools that might be the best fit for you are.
Yeah, and there's a lot of resources online to look at school ratings. I think all the real estate websites now have school ratings. They might have their own system, but you'll see some consistency across different sites for different districts, different elementary, middle, and high schools. As I understand it, and this is something that, you know, a lot of people have tend to have some confusion around, okay, what do these ratings actually mean? You know, what are they calculating? And as I understand it, those ratings primarily are based on the tax base for that particular school. So the higher the home values in a particular area, the higher the tax, the property taxes are, and then by default, more funding goes to the school. So a lot of those ratings do kind of, you know, really, you know, weight the funding over a lot of other things. You know, there's not really a way to see, you know, on a website, what is it like day to day in a particular school? You know, what are the classrooms like? What are the teachers like? And, you know, those may be things that you don't necessarily get answers to, and the funding that a school may have, you know, doesn't always correlate necessarily with the quality of educators, for example. So, you know, there's a lot of nuance in this conversation, and, you know, there are things that, you know, just kind of remain unknown, but something to keep in mind when you're looking at the school ratings. They don't always tell the whole story.
Yeah, so we do have a lot of great schools. Can just be kind of dependent on where you're looking though. So that's something you want to get with us on. Private schools too, we have a lot of great private schools. We do have an international school which is rated in the top 100 schools of the country. Private schools are spendy, but we do have a lot of great private schools here as well too. So for more information on schools, get with us on that.
Yeah, on the private school side, the only thing I can compare it to is Seattle. It's about 3 hours north of us. That's where my wife is from. She went to a private school. It seems like everybody in Seattle, or maybe 50% of people in Seattle, go to a private school. There's just a lot more options for private school. Growing up here and kind of what's available now, it doesn't seem like there's as many options necessarily for private schools. We do have them, and there are some great private schools out there. A lot of them might be a lot smaller. And they're just less abundant overall, but a lot of the public school systems are great too. So yeah, that's something we can definitely talk about when you're, during your home search.
Yeah, I thought the school system I came up in, which was in Clackamas County, one of the 3 counties in the Portland metro area, I thought it was great. I had a handful of friends maybe that went to private schools, and they thought the private schools were really good. Specifically, they thought that the teachers were really good. They thought the teachers were maybe a little bit, I don't know what you might say, a little bit more dynamic or whatever. But I don't know too many people, but the people I do know definitely said that their private school experience in Portland was really good.
Yeah, another thing you can look at too, is facilities. Like Seth said, there are a handful of new high schools, either brand new high schools that didn't exist before, or there are high schools that are being completely remodeled or rebuilt. So that's something you can look at too, if that's a priority. Most of the high schools, and really all of the schools overall in Portland public schools, tend to be a little bit older, tend to have a lot of maintenance needs, and need a lot of updates. So there's been a couple Portland high schools in Portland proper that have been remodeled in the last 5 or 10 years, and I think they're all on track to be remodeled, but there's bonds that have to go in place, funding, so it's a whole process to make that happen. So depending on where you live, you could be in a high school that was built in the 1940s or 50s, and there's stuff falling from the ceiling sometimes, or you could live in a neighborhood where that feeds into a high school that is like was built 2 years ago. So there's a lot of variety, and again, that's just something we can chat about.
Where I went to school, which was in Clackamas County, pretty much all of the schools in Clackamas County in the past 10, 15 years or so are either new or have been remodeled, right? So Clackamas High School is brand new. Well, it's not, at this point maybe not quite brand new, but newish. Yeah. Oregon City, newish. Milwaukee's been remodeled. Lake Ridge. So all of the schools in Clackamas County definitely are going to be updated or new, which is really nice. But again, it's going to vary by area, and so you'll just want to get with us kind of more for the specifics.
Yeah, so probably the biggest category that we can talk about, and it's maybe most relevant to parents or prospective parents, are just things to do. Yeah, what are the activities that you have available to you in the Portland metro area, really, and beyond too, because we live an hour, a little over an hour away from Mount Hood, and a little over an hour away from the beach. So, between kind of the, that hour radius and everything inside of that, there's a lot to do.
Yeah, it's nice because you can take a little day trip and get somewhere pretty quick, like to the beach. Yeah. And then by the time it's ready for nap time, you can head home. So there's a lot of really, whether you're just trying to stay close to home, or if you're taking a little day trip, there's a lot of different places that you can go around the Portland area and take the kids.
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of within Portland, there are a lot of private businesses that offer little gyms and classes and things like that, that you can sign up and pay for. There are things that are a little more affordable through the community centers, through Portland Parks and Rec or THPRD, which is in Washington County, and then whatever's in Clackamas County. I'm sure there's rec centers that offer art classes and things like that, music classes, but beyond that, we're at the Oregon Zoo right now, and you can get an annual membership here for about $150. I think at least at that price level, you get 2 adults, and kids under 2 are free. So There's also OMSI, the Oregon Museum of Science and Industry. You can get an annual membership to that. That's just about $150 as well for the year.
And that's an awesome place.
Yeah, OMSI's really cool.
I mean, that's got to be one of the coolest places to take kids, like, in the entire state.
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, it's super educational, and you know, there's kind of something for every age range. Upstairs, there's like a, you know, maybe 3 years old, 4 years old and under area, you know, which has more kind of like sensory stuff and some art and blocks that you can build, and there's like this climbing structure, you know, that you can climb up on, and that's really cool. And then down below they have, you know, kind of some more advanced, like, you know, engineering type activities. It's the Oregon Museum of Science and Industry, so you know, there's like earthquake generators and
Right.
you know, there's this thing, there's like these tubes. This was my favorite when I was a kid. There's these tubes that blow air, and you can take balls of different weights and put it above the air so they float. You can see how high they float and which ones do and which ones don't. So there's all kinds of stuff like that. You can spend hours at OMSI, and again, it's super affordable, and that's just right downtown Portland, or across the river from downtown Portland.
Yeah, other inexpensive stuff too, the library.
Yeah.
Usually going to be free. Most libraries throughout the area offer some sort of program or programs for kids. My kid started taking sign language like when he was 1.5 years, 2 years old, something like that. Right before COVID, actually. A lot of that stuff got stopped after COVID, but a lot of that stuff is coming back now. I know your kid does some stuff at the library too.
Yeah, I think the libraries are on a county basis, so, you know, depending on what county you're in, probably Multnomah, Washington, or Clackamas County, I think you just go online or go to a library and sign up for a library card. It's free, and then, yeah, I mean, my wife and daughter go to the library at least once a week and check out books, you know, bring them back a few days later, do it all again, and that's something that they love to do, and there's always a ton of kids there.
Yeah.
My daughter likes to come home and tell me about friends that she made at the library. So, yeah, it's definitely nice to have.
Yeah. Next thing, I think sports is big too.
Sure.
We both grew up playing sports here. I thought the youth sports experience was great. You've got intramurals too. My kid started playing soccer when he was right around 2 or so. There's kind of no limit to kind of the sports offerings for kids. You know, as soon as they can walk, you know, all the way up and through, you know, 12th grade.
Yeah.
And so there's tons of intramural stuff, you know, for people that aren't super competitive, and there's a lot of competitive sports too. If you when you look up online some of the top schools around the Portland area, you're probably going to notice that a lot of those top schools, as Paul was saying, getting sort of allocated larger budgets, also tend to have some of the top sports teams, especially the teams that are kind of or the sports rather that are more popular like football, basketball, soccer. So you'll kind of notice a correlation between some of the really competitive sports and some of the top schools.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, you know, kind of every district, you know, whether that's kind of the suburb or town that you're living in or anywhere in Portland, has a lot of great opportunities for youth sports. My daughter's actually starting soccer on Sunday, so we'll see how that goes.
It's a little bit like herding cats, I think.
Yeah, right.
At that age, but it's a good time for them to just get out there and interact with other kids and kick the ball around, and those things usually aren't too hard to find. So it's not like those things book up real quick or you can't find anywhere because it's really limited. There's a tons of opportunities for different types of sports for kids.
Yeah, and you know, if your kid isn't going to be involved in sports or is involved in something else, again, you know, there are a lot of opportunities, you know, through like the Parks Department, for example, to do things like art, music. So kind of across the board, there's really no shortage of activities to get your kids involved in or things to go do with your kids. You know, one thing we didn't really talk about yet, kind of on this topic, is, you know, kind of the vast array of parks that you have, kind of regardless of where you live in the Portland metro area. Obviously, Portland's a very green place, a lot of trees, and there's a lot of green open space, that the city of Portland and the surrounding suburbs have dedicated for city parks. So, great playgrounds. A lot of them, the parks that are big enough have like hiking trails, so you can just go for a walk, whether it's a stroller walk or if your kids are older, you can go do a run, whatever it may be. But, something that is free and always accessible, probably within a 5 to 10 minute walk of your doorstep, regardless of where you live, would be a great park, or potentially several.
Yeah, a lot of big parks, a lot of state parks around here. But all the neighborhoods, and probably more specifically kind of out in the suburbs, the Washington County and Clackamas County, all these neighborhoods typically have parks within walking distance. I know I've got at least a couple parks. You can just walk out your door and walk down the street to the park. So don't have to, pile the kids in the car, which is always a pain. So these neighborhoods around, again, specifically kind of around the suburbs, are sort of designed so that you're running into parks everywhere that you go. Another thing too, music. I know music's important to a lot of people as well too. Usually music lessons, especially like the more popular stuff, piano, violin, those are usually easy to find. One of the tougher things to find, though, I will say, in Portland is swim lessons. You want to get your kid in swim lessons. That is one that can be difficult to find. There's not a ton of pools around here. And so those things do book up really quick. So that can be tricky.
Yeah.
But we can help you with that too. Know lots of swim instructors, so we can refer you to somebody if you're looking for swim lessons.
Yeah, it's not that they're not available, but like Seth said, it's just there's not as many, and obviously having access to an outdoor pool, there's not as many, but it's cold a lot of the year here, so some parts of the country, I'm sure you can do swim lessons year round at any number of outdoor pools. Well, it's a little bit more limited here, so if that's something that you want to get your kids into, it can be a little bit hard to find. It can also be a little bit hard to find a place that has availability.
Yeah.
Another thing too is summer camps are really big in this part of the country, because we have so much open nature and space. I know like a lot of places like in the Northeast, for example, in that part of the country, there's a lot of more densely populated urban areas, and you have to drive 5-7 hours to go up to Maine or whatever, wherever.
From New York.
Yeah, to go to a summer camp. And I think there's probably a dozen, maybe a couple dozen, maybe more, I don't know, summer camps within probably an hour of the Portland metro area. So, as far as summer camps go, whether it's like an overnight camp or if it's like a day camp through community centers, things like YMCA, there are a lot of options for that as well.
Yeah, I only went to summer camp once growing up, but it was awesome. And I think it was probably an hour and a half away, probably around Corvallis or so.
Okay.
Somewhere around there. I went to a leadership camp. I don't know if you would call that summer camp. I was actually vice president in a junior high of my school.
Oh.
And so they sent all of us to
that's awesome.
to leadership camp. That was at Chemeketa Community College. That was fun.
Yeah,
that was
nice.
fun for a 7th, 8th grader. But the summer camps here, all of the ones that I know people that have had experiences with are really great, and it is nice that they are so close by.
Did you ever go to outdoor school?
We didn't go to outdoor school. No, that was I think 6th grade. We were supposed to go to outdoor school. We just didn't for some reason.
So I don't know how many or which schools offer it, but I think all the Portland public schools offer it. At least the school that I went to, and every 6th grader as a class goes to outdoor school for I don't know, probably 4 or 5 nights. I don't really remember at this point,
like
but we went to outdoor school as a class, and collected samples in the creek, and did little
Where'd you
hikes
guys go?
and things like that. Oh man,
we were supposed to go somewhere around the coast.
I want to say it was called like Wilson. Maybe it was by the Wilson River.
Okay.
I guess that was the name of my high school, so maybe that's what I'm confusing.
Something like that.
Yeah, it was something like that. But I know, back then, so every class went to a different camp for outdoor school, and there was 7 or 8 different 6th grade classes, or however many, and they all went to these different camps. So point being, there's a lot of options for kind of those outdoor type overnight camps, for your kids to go to.
Yeah. Anything else on the activities?
Well, I think we can talk about, and really just overall, I think a point that can be made is Portland is always on these lists of like top cities for millennials. And so, ranging
Right.
from like, ages maybe 30 to 40, give or take. Obviously, that's going to be an age category that has a lot of kids, a lot of younger kids. So it just kind of feels like, I don't know the exact statistics, but really everywhere you go, it seems like there's young families. And that could be places like the zoo where we're at today, but even if you just go to a neighborhood and walk around, or in particular like restaurants, going out to eat, it seems like almost everywhere you go is really kid friendly, and there's 5 other kids, 10 other kids in the restaurant, so maybe you don't have to feel as bad.
Yeah, there's definitely restaurants that they're maybe not necessarily designed for kids, but they're kind of just good hangout places for kids, where you kind of, as soon as you walk in, you see there's a lot of other parents with kids, and the servers kind of how to interact with the kids, and maybe there's something like a claw machine or something like that for the kids, and it's usually not very quiet in there, so everybody's kind of on the same page. But in some of the towns throughout some of these counties, the Tri-County area, you're going to find some towns that are more densely populated with households that have kids, and those areas tend to have restaurants, that are sort of places that are a little bit more kid-friendly. So definitely a place that's that has a lot of kid-friendly restaurants and things to do and places to go where people are taking their kids.
Yeah, I mean, I would say even in Portland proper, really all of the Portland area, but in particular like Portland itself, there's a ton of breweries. Like, the brewery
Right.
industry is, as big here, bigger than anywhere else in the country, as you may know by now. And all these breweries seem to be, super kid friendly. And you're probably not the only one there with a kid. A lot of them have outdoor spaces, so it's not just the suburbs. It's really like a lot of places throughout all of Portland, even in the city too. It's just not uncommon to see kids running around.
Right. Yeah, I actually just saw a couple days ago in Astoria, there's a place that just popped up that's a brewery, but it has like games and like it's kind of like a Dave and Buster's.
Oh, okay.
I should know the name so I can plug it.
Like a Chuck E. Cheese.
Yeah, kind of like
for
a Chuck E.
adults.
Cheese, right? Right. But yeah, so it's a brewery, and then it's got all the kids stuff. So I think it's not surprising that a place like that pops up, because there is a big demand for places that parents can go and kind of hang out a little bit, but also not have to worry about the kids. They can maybe let the kids go a little bit, not worry about if the kids are being noisy or causing problems, because everybody else is on the same page. Everybody else has their kids there. So a lot of places you'll find like that around Portland, and I guess along the Oregon coast as well.
Yeah, just make sure that if you're going to some of these places, just make sure you tip your server a little
Right.
extra,
Yeah.
because
Kids are messy.
I mean, more often than not, you like look at the ground after you're done
Yeah.
eating and you're about to leave, and there's just
War zone.
a huge mess everywhere. So,
Yep.
yeah, I mean, the servers tend to be pretty accommodating. At least that's my experience. But yeah, it's nice to maybe kick them a little something extra,
Yeah, you gotta.
because of the mess. But
Yeah.
another thing too, something that's really popular in the Portland area is joining a winery. Because there are so many wineries, and vineyards around kind of this part of Oregon, around the Portland metro area. So a lot of these places have wine clubs that you can join, and part of that membership includes like being able to go to a winery and get a free glass of wine or a free tasting, every time you visit. So I would say if that's something you're interested in, and you could see yourself like bringing the kids there. Some are going to be more kid friendly. Some aren't going to allow kids at all. And then, kind of everything in between. Some might allow kids, but you're not going to see a ton of kids there, just kind of depending on the setup. The place that we joined, Oloro, when we joined, you were allowed to bring kids. And in the last couple of years, they built this new awesome facility, but they don't serve food anymore. So legally, they can't allow kids there, because you have to allow minors, you have to serve food on the premises as well. So just something to think about. It seems like a lot of young families that do join wineries, do bring their kids out there like on a Saturday or Sunday, but just make sure it's kid friendly before you pull the trigger on that.
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually. I've spent a little bit of time throughout Napa and Sonoma, and I know a lot of people that are going to watch this are going to be coming from California, and I can't really think of too many places that I've been throughout Napa and Sonoma that were kind of kid-friendly or places that people bring their kids. A little bit different here in Oregon. In fact, there's a winery walking distance from where I live that people always take their kids. They've got a big field there, actually.
It's got to be Oswego Hills?
Oswego Hills, yeah. They got a big field there, and people just bring the kids and like a soccer ball or whatever, game, football, whatever games you want to play, and the kids run around on the field, and the parents, there's places to sit, or you can set a blanket out on the field, and it's really super kid friendly at Oswego Hills, and there's a lot of other places around the Portland area. So it's if you're used to like Napa and Sonoma, and maybe there are some places like that in Napa and Sonoma, but maybe not quite the same vibe here in around Portland and the Willamette Valley. It's definitely more family friendly.
Yeah, and that so Oswego Hills, for example, probably 20-minute drive from downtown. If there's no traffic?
Yeah, from downtown Portland, yeah. 20 minutes maybe, yeah.
So it's not like, for some of these places, it's not like, you're driving for an hour and a half to get there. I mean, these are places that are, more or less in town when you look at the metro area, and you're not going to have to travel too far.
Yeah, or it's, just down the street from where you live.
Yeah, right.
If you're
exactly.
in Clackamas County or Washington County.
Yeah, there's another wine region that like out Cooper Mountain, which is about 20 minutes from my house, and there's 10 different wineries out there, and they're really popular, and they, all the ones I've been to are great. So no matter where you live around the Portland metro area, you're gonna have access to these type of places in pretty quick drive or walking distance.
Or walk, yeah. How about childcare?
Yeah.
So childcare, I think the childcare here is probably pretty similar to the rest of the country. It's really expensive. You can find it. You're not going to have trouble finding childcare. I think for the most part, there's a lot of different options, but it definitely is pretty spendy.
Yeah. I think the cost of childcare is probably going to be pretty commensurate with the cost of living overall. So depending on where you're coming from, it might be a little bit cheaper, than other parts of the country. If you're coming from like the Bay Area, for example, or if you're coming from the Midwest, it's probably going to seem a lot more expensive. It's going to kind of fall in line with kind of the standard income or average income relative to what childcare typically costs anywhere around the country. I would think so, at least. But we're shopping around for preschools right now for my daughter, and the options for like 2-3 years old is typically about 2 or 3 days a week, maybe 5 to 10 hours a week. I think you can find some more full-time like daycare type options as well, but for preschool, and that could run anywhere from $300 a month, could be $1,000 a month. It just depends. And
we pay $300 a month for 2 days a week for 3 hours a day. I think childcare is probably around on average maybe about $1,500 a month or so, which that could be really expensive. That just depends on what your budget is, though, I guess.
Yeah. So like I mentioned too earlier, like a lot of these community centers and these different parks and recreation departments, which are typically on a county basis, so again, Washington County, Multnomah County, or Clackamas County, you can find a lot of classes that are like 6 or 8 weeks long, 1 day a week, for an hour, but it's like $50 or $60 for an art class or a gym class, or that's the soccer that my daughter's doing is part of a Parks and Rec department. So there are things that you can find throughout the week to kind of plug in activities, but that probably doesn't necessarily completely fall in line with childcare, because you need to accompany your child there too. So that's more of a way to kind of break up the day if you don't need more of kind of a longer period of actual childcare. So
preschools do, in my experience, book up quick too.
So
you usually want to start shopping 6 to 12 months in advance. Once you get into a preschool, though, you're going to have first right of refusal every year. So once you get in, you'll be in. But definitely kind of figure out where you want to go, what your preference is, and then get that application in as quickly as possible because they do fill up really fast.
Yep. All right, so last thing we're going to talk about in this video, you think Portland's a safe place to raise a family?
For the most part, the answer to that question, I think was always like 100% emphatically yes. It definitely has changed a little bit over the last few years. It just depends on where you're going. For the vast majority of, and we're talking about the Portland metro area, not just like downtown Portland, which includes Washington and Clackamas County. For the vast majority of areas, it's going to be safe, but there definitely are going to be some spots that you might want to watch out for. There's some parks that I might not maybe take my kids to. Probably mostly in Multnomah County. I would say pretty much anywhere throughout Washington or Clackamas County, you're probably going to feel safe. You're probably not going to find a needle in the park. For some of these people maybe watching from San Francisco, or wherever else in California where it might be a little bit more common. There's going to be a few spots in like Multnomah County in Portland where it's kind of questionable, but for the most part, definitely safe. But that's part of what we're here for. We can definitely kind of point out to you where maybe some of the spots that might not quite be as safe.
Yeah, I think, if you want to look at this from a purely objective standpoint, there's perspective and preference around, kind of what your threshold is as far as, what you can tolerate. I think, you don't hear about, too many crimes being committed against children. Like you don't hear about kidnappings right. or assaults or things like that. So it's more just exposure and kind of some of the things that might be happening more in a particular area and less in others, like cars getting broken into or businesses getting robbed or vandalized, things like assaults, for example. Some of those kind of like violent crimes against people or property. There are areas in particular of Portland proper where there's just a higher rate of that, but we can talk about that. There is public data on niche.com and other places online. So definitely, we encourage you to do some research if you're interested in a particular area, and we can add some context around that. But we don't want to steer anybody one way or another based on crime rate necessarily, but obviously we want you to be in a place where you feel safe for you and your family. I think, a lot of these areas of Portland where, you would kind of see the statistics or hear that there is more crime, there's a lot of families there. And so, it's not necessarily like you get into these, family deserts where there's, a lot of crime and no kids or community and family.
Yeah.
It's not the case. So obviously in more urban areas, closer to downtown areas, across the country, anywhere you go, there's a higher rate of crime. But, whether or not that makes it, more or less safe or more unsafe rather, for your kids in particular, again, you probably just have to have kind of a personal preference around that. But like Seth said, you start getting into some of these more suburban areas, crime rate's a lot lower. You kind of just look around, give it the sniff test, and it feels a little bit safer being there. So, but do you want to live in a suburban area? Do you want to live in a more urban area? There's trade-offs and pros and cons to those things, and obviously a trade-off to living in a, closer to the city is there tends to be a little bit more crime. So, again, we can talk more about that for sure once we start locking in different neighborhoods and areas that you're interested in.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, there's definitely going to be a few pockets, and probably just going back maybe just 5 years ago, definitely pre-pandemic. I mean, there really wasn't anywhere that I really ever, felt like was maybe kind of sketchy or, you didn't feel comfortable taking your kids. But there are a few pockets these days. There are a lot of places though where you would be hard pressed to find anything that's going to be, troubling or upsetting or something that you wouldn't want to expose your kids to, whether it's, people doing stuff or, like I said, finding a needle on the ground or something like that. There's a lot of places where you'd have to look long and hard before you'd find any of that. So overall, yes, safe place, but probably a few places that you might want to avoid. But again, if you're thinking about moving here or moving somewhere around the Portland area and you already live here, get with Paul and I, and we can kind of discuss the specifics for that on you.
Yeah, and I mean, I would venture to guess I'm biased. I think we're a little biased, but I would venture to guess that Portland is amongst, one of the best places to raise a family in the country, and probably one of the safest places to raise a family in the country if you're looking at the metro area as a whole.
Yeah.
Again, there's going to be a lot of variety, a lot of options, and kind of a range in terms of what that might look like on paper versus what it might actually be like living in that particular area.
Yeah, and that's what we can really kind of give you some more insight on.
Yeah, so if you are thinking about buying a home in Portland or in the Portland metro area, if you're thinking about relocating to Oregon, give us a call, send us a text, shoot us an email. Again, schedule a Zoom call in the description of this video. There's a link there, and get on our calendar. We can talk for 15, 20, 30 minutes about your circumstance, what you're looking for, your budget, all of those good things, and we can start looking at houses, looking at what your options are, and we can be off and running from there.
If this helps you, make sure you subscribe. We've got a lot more videos like this coming. Give us a thumbs up. That always helps us to know that we did a good job. And if you want to weigh in or have questions, you can always feel free in the comments. You'll probably notice that we do respond to these comments a lot too, so feel free to just leave a comment if you have a question or just want to give us general feedback. Other than that, thanks for watching. Take care, everyone.
We'll talk to you later.
Bye.